Muscle on the beat, yep. Man, it's Friday night. Friday night, and I just got paid. I need to unwind. Where's the party? Remember that joint? I don't go to no parties, man. I don't do parties no more. I mean, obviously, if it's it's going to honor the Lord. But listen, man, it's Friday night. I know y'all busy, y'all doing whatever. I don't even know who's going to jump in and pop in. But I just thought, man, it's been a crazy couple of days. It's really interesting, man, if you really look at how things just happen, right? It's been a crazy, so let's just do a quick review. Today is January 24th. First of all, can you believe that the month of January is almost already over, fam? I remember Happy New Year like it was, right? But let's do a quick rewind and talk about how crazy 2025 has been, right? Happy New Year, January 1st. Dude drives a truck down Bourbon Street in New Orleans. Ridiculous, right? So we're reminded, for all the people who were like, man, I can't wait for the new year. Anyone else sick of 2024 and can't wait? 2025 comes in swinging. Tragedy, right? Then we get the craziest wildfires we've ever seen in the history of our country, right? I have friends that live in LA, and I was talking to my buddy in particular. He called me, and he had me on FaceTime, and I was looking in his neighborhood at all the smoke at the end of the street. It was phenomenal. And even if someone's like, no, actually, you know how people be fact checking you for it's not even that serious. But even if you can say, well, no, there's been bigger fires in terms of more destruction, in terms of maybe more property. The reality is we've never seen wildfires wipe out like Hollywood like that, like Pacific Palisades. Like the wind was blowing so hard that it blew embers across different parts of that, right? So you got that. You get blizzards and super cold weather on the East Coast, right? You get hurricanes in the South. So in every region, whatever the weather conditions are, it just ramped up in the last couple of weeks. Then you get Trump is inaugurated, and he goes on a rampage. I mean, I'll give him his credit. He said he was going to sign a lot of executive orders, and Trump has done just that. So Trump is on a rampage, so we're going to talk about it. And then you got the NFL playoffs. Oh, man. Let's get into it, man. First things first, welcome to CNN. I am your host, the underdog, Kirk Kennedy. Let's go in. On this channel, we take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. So we do. All right. Welcome. It's Friday night. For those of you watching live or later, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for all the new subscribers that have come in. I got a slew of new subscribers. Thank you. Appreciate you. Like and subscribe to the channel. Let's get it. Thank you for your feedback on the Brian Trejo video. That was a crazy, tragic moment. And it's just going to, it's interesting. For us, we see these snippets of people's pain and suffering, and then we kind of move on. You watch a video, you follow it for a couple days, and then life goes on. You got stuff going on, life goes on. But those people, it still goes on for them. This may affect this woman the rest of her life. So who knows? She put out some more stuff on Facebook, but I was like, I've covered what I wanted to cover from that, unless something else crazy happens. But all right. So we're going to start with, for some of y'all, we're going to start with the NFL playoffs. Yeah. For those of you who know me, y'all know how I get down. Listen. Y'all know how I get down. Right? I'm not just a Washington Commanders fan. I'm a Washington Redskins fan to Commanders fan. I've had season tickets for 20 years. I've been a pastor at my church for almost 17 years. I have season tickets for 20 years, right? I've been there when all of our teams have been terrible, right? We haven't been in the playoffs since '05 when Mark Brunell was quarterback. And we won a game. I think we beat the Jacksonville Jaguars, who we actually got him from. I was there when RG3 came on and was a sensation. I was there in the playoff game when we played Seattle with a then rookie quarterback, Russell Wilson. I was there. and watched RG3 end his career in one season. Because he wouldn't slide. I was there. I watched all of it. I was there. In 2020 when Taylor Hart, I was there for all of it. And now I'm here and I'm loving it. I love that we're playing Philly in the NFC East division rival. They're a better team on paper, but I love just the momentum we have. And if you're a Commanders fan like me, whew, you're watching the whole world talk about your quarterback. That's my quarterback off my TO. Watching the whole country talk about your quarterback. This is amazing for us because normally we watch people talk about other teams. It's incredible that we're the one of the top 4 teams left in the league. We're playing for the NFC Championship on Sunday. That's just incredible. Even if we lose, any real Redskins fan, Commanders fan is not tripping because we understand that we're not supposed to be here right now. And this is the beginning for us. This isn't like, oh no, if we don't win, we got to start all over next season. No, this is the worst we're going to be because other players want to come play for us. They like what they say is doing. This is the worst the Washington Commanders are going to be, and we're in the NFC Championship. Oh, I can't wait. If I haven't just got my hair done, I'd have been rocking this joint. Just so y'all know, but I can't do that. I just got it shaped up. You know what I'm saying? We can't do that. So I'm excited about the NFL playoffs. Those of y'all that have been following me, been saying, man, I'm happy for you. Thank you. I appreciate you. This little segment was for y'all. All right, now let's get into it. Let's have some real conversations. Boy, oh boy. Politics today. Woo! Boy, oh boy. I'm old enough to remember when politics, when it patterned itself after and even patted itself on the back with this term bipartisanship. I'm old enough to remember a time when what helped a person win in the presidential seat, at least, it's funny because only in the presidency does this matter. If you are running for Congress or you're some type of judge or whatever, but usually with Congress, you never have to talk about bipartisanship. Like when you're in Congress, you're appealing to your constituents. You're appealing to the people who are on the left, the Democrats. If you're a Democrat, you're appealing to the Republicans on the right, whatever, right? But when you are running for president, you have to say, hey, I've proven that I can work with both parties, right? I've proven that because there was a time in our country when what mattered to people was that there was a sort of equilibrium, like a set system of checks and balances that the way that the executive branch and all of these things was relegated, right? It was supposed to be a presidency. You wanted to have these different branches of government: presidency, Supreme Court, House, Senate. You wanted to have all of this for the purpose of having checks and balances, right? So no one could just run amok in the country. So up until recently, most of the presidential slogans, or part of them, have been, I know how to work with both parties. I'm going to work across the aisle, that kind of language, right? You always had that. I thought that little thumb. Bill Clinton was famous for the thumb. You know, like he was an incredible thumb wrestling champion. But he was famous for this, like this little, but there was this sense where bipartisanship is what matters. And people voted for people whom they thought will work with the other side because we understand there's blue and red, right? America bleeds blue and red, sort of. Now, politics today, that is out the window, fam. Like bipartisanship doesn't matter. Like we've gotten to a point where instead of working together, politics today has become destroy the other side. So basically, and you and I are just sort of left in the middle. Now, maybe you may be one of those people who is a diehard, whatever side you find yourself on, and you want the other side destroyed because they're destroying the fabric of the nation. Fine, that happens. People say that. People have been saying that for a while. They say it about both sides. Sometimes it's true to varying degrees. Sometimes it's not. I have a different take on the fabric of the nation, which I'll get to in just a minute. But a lot of times, the way politics today works, and the reason why I think Trump is such a polarizing figure, is because politics today is not about bipartisanship. It's not about convincing America that you can work with both sides of the aisle in order to bring about the good of America. That's what it used to be. You go back and watch presidential slogans. Bipartisanship was one of the main things. But now it's really a demolition. It's demolishing. It went from bipartisan to demolishing the other side. So whatever laws that they pass that we don't like, and let's be clear, Democrats and Republicans have never really liked the same stuff, but they work together for the good of the nation, right? Now the good of the nation doesn't matter anymore. Politics has become, in many ways, a system of vengeance, is what it is. Politics is a system of vengeance where, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there aren't bad laws that need to be overturned. That's not what I'm saying. There are bad laws that need to be overturned on both sides, no question. But politics is, we have to understand what politics is. We are not a part of politics, you and I. We think we are, but it's placebo. We're not a part of politics. The only time we remotely play a role in politics is during election time. That's when your senators and all that will come in your neighborhood to do small town meetings because they love the power of politics, and so they don't want to lose it. Keep in mind, the president is only allowed to serve 8 years, either consecutively or separate. You know, he can do 4 years, like Trump, 4 years, 8 years ago, he was president, or 8 years. You can't do more than 8 years. But the House and the they can be in there till they die. They can get in there at 25 years old and retire at 70. They're in there for decades. And so what's happened is over the decades, you'll have different political parties that control very important fabrics of America. And if you're Republican, you need this Democrat-led a group to approve something that you need in your area. And then if they say no, then it becomes... So politics has become a system of vengeance. And you and I only play a small role in keeping them in, but we're not deciding laws. We do not decide. They decide laws for us and tell us what we should think about and care about. That's what they do it all the time. Remember when it was in the 2020 election, when Bernie Sanders was basically looking like he might be the Democratic nominee. People were riding with Bernie Byrne. He was burning them up, right? Remember when no one had heard from Obama at this point. Joe Biden was losing steam. Kamala Harris was unraveling. And Bernie Sanders was kind of rising to the top. I think Amy Klobuchar was holding on a little bit. But Cory Booker was just like repeating himself in all the debates. It was looking like Bernie Sanders was going to win it. Then all of a sudden, Obama comes out of nowhere. This is summer 2020. Obama comes out of nowhere. And he doesn't say Bernie Sanders' name, but he essentially says, listen, the American people, they don't want all of these things. They don't want the fabric, everything free, college free, all this stuff free. They just want a good, faithful society that can help their families grow. They don't want to have all these things. They don't want to have all systems blown up. Everyone anyone knew he was saying, don't listen to Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is trying to blow up everything and make everything free and create a society that America's never had, and you don't want to vote for that dude. That was his way of saying that, but he wouldn't come out and say it because Bernie Sanders is a Democrat, right? So then that gave Joe Biden some steam, but it still looked like he wasn't going to win, and then he goes down to South Carolina. This was right before that, South Carolina primary. That prominent black pastor and his church prominent helps Joe Biden win South Carolina, and all of a sudden he has steam, and now he's the front runner again. But when Obama said that, it was like, hey, listen, we don't want that. We don't want that. Obama was speaking for the American people, and that was the first time you realize, like, wow, these politicians they're not listening to anybody. They're telling us what we should believe in, and we're voting for them, but it's supposed to be the other way around. Here are the things that we want, we the people, right? That's what the documents say, we the people. We the people, not we the politicians. We the people. We the people. So what's happened is it's not we the people, it's we the politicians. So you and I are the puppets. We're the Muppets. Where we're the hand puppets, where they're just telling us what to say to each other. We're arguing over their talking points. This is what politics has become today. It's a system of vengeance now. So, clue in Donald Trump, tag in Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a vengeful man. Whether you voted for him or not, and don't get me wrong, I think there are some things that he does I think that are right. I'm sorry. There are some things that he's not. I may not I may not agree. I may not think he's a moral character. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I don't trust anybody, to be honest with you. But I live in a country and I understand that there's a system in the way we do things, but I don't trust any of them. I don't believe any of them. And as a believer, I don't believe any of them have Christ and him crucified at all as their motive. And so it's like, okay, it's the lesser of two evils depending on what people are going against. For me. You don't have to agree. You can attack me in the comments if you want. It's not going to affect me. I don't even know you like that. So you have, this is what's happening. Tag in Trump. Trump tags in second time. And people love him. They love Trump in the conservatives did because he was a bull in the China closet. But he was a bull in the Democratic China closet. He's just going to run everything over, overturn what they do, all this stuff. I'm going to get rid of Obamacare. It wasn't really about what's best for the country unless you agree with his policies. It was about demolishing what the other side did, right? That's what politics has turned into. But it's deeper than that, and we'll get to that in a second. I'm just trying to give you a premise so you can understand where we're getting ready to go. So now, in his second term, I think it was pretty much a landslide victory in terms of the last few presidential elections. It was clear by 7, 8 p.m. that Kamala Harris is not going to win. And Kamala Harris should have never been put on the ticket. But I've said this before. Let me explain to you what happens. The way that the government works, there's money given to you ever heard of a PAC, right? These PACs are organizations that raise money and give money for politicians, right? And it's basically a restricted fund. Like if you work I'm a pastor. If someone gives a check and it says, "Hey," in the memo section says this is for outreach and such, all right? That is a restricted fund. Our church, we cannot use that money for anything else besides what's in the memo. Restricted. If we don't have that program per se, then we could give the money back and ask the person, would you be willing to let us use it for a more general purpose or something else, right? But if it says this is what it's for, it's a restricted fund. PAC money is like a restricted fund. If we're giving money to the Biden and Harris campaign, it can only go to the Biden and Harris campaign. You can't give it to the Cory Booker campaign if Biden and Harris drop out because it's restricted fund. That's how it works. PAC money works. So there was a ton of money given to the Biden-Harris campaign, right, to reelect Joe Biden. The problem was the Democrats thought we were so slow that we wouldn't recognize that Joe Biden often has no idea where he is. And it wasn't until he went to that first debate with Donald Trump where it was just clear. First of all, why did we have the two oldest dudes ever in the history of politics running for president? Where are all these young gunners, these young 40, 50-year-old Republicans and Democrats? It was blowing me away that two of the oldest men in American history are running, but then Joe Biden clearly has no idea where he is. I'm not trying to mock the guy. My grandfather had dementia. I watched it happen. I watched it. Joe Biden clearly has no idea what he's doing in many ways. How can you present this man as someone to run the country? You do not love America if you're trying to tell us to re-vote for Joe Biden. It was clear to everyone, but surprisingly, more clearer to the Democrats. They started saying, hey, he needs to pull out. He didn't even want to. The first 2 weeks, he was pushing back. No, I'm not stepping out. I'm not getting out of the race. And then finally, one day, he sends a letter, I'm getting out of the race, right? Once Joe Biden said that all those millions of dollars in PAC money that are on the Biden-Harris ticket are going to be gone unless Kamala Harris becomes the front runner because the money is for that ticket, Biden-Harris. Donald Trump had no one opposing him. No one was really opposing Donald Trump. In the 2020, you had Ron DeSantis. There were people like, oh, he's the next big guy. But no one was opposing Donald Trump, really. He was just running again. And then he gets shot, almost assassinated, and then all of a sudden he becomes this hero. So he has no one opposing him. So all the money that's coming in is just for him. But the Democrats are starting late. They only got a couple months to gain support. They don't want to lose millions of dollars to try to find someone else to convince the American people, well, we got the money for the Biden-Harris ticket. Kamala's our gal. Right? All of a sudden, you got that joy to be. But the whole time she was a vice president, no one ever saw her. She was a ghost. She was a ghost of Christmas past. She had the lowest rating as a vice president in American history. Lower than Dick Cheney. And Dick Cheney was low. He was doing limbo with it. She was lower than Dick Cheney, right? All of a sudden, she comes up. People aren't stupid, man. They're not stupid. We're not stupid. So landslide victory for Trump. Now he comes in and he's doing exactly what he's bulling China clocks, bulling the Democrats. He's overturning. So politics today has become a vehicle for vengeance, and that's why our country is even more at odds. Because here's what happens. In the Bible, right? In the Old Testament, whenever the king was evil, if you go back and read like Kings, Chronicles, this is what you'll see, right? Whenever the king was evil, he made the nation more evil. If the king was evil, the nation became more evil. It was a one-to-one. It was one-to-one. The nation would sin. It would be like he was more evil than his father, like the previous king who made Israel evil, and is what happens. So whenever you look to people in positions of leadership, and they're supposed to be like driving the nation forward, if they're evil, it's human nature to follow their evil. And so as American politics has become more vengeful and more about vengeance and overdoing and mocking the other side and doing that, so has the American people. Even believers will now fight tooth and nail and totally forget about what is the character of grace that God requires. Not the doctrines of grace. We understand what the Bible says and you can quote scriptures, but what is the care? What do you live the way? So that's become the thing. Years ago, I started calling a lot of American Christians on the left and right theological, not theological, theological. My Christianity and my politics are intertwined, and this becomes something new. And so we're seeing it happen, and I don't think it's biblical at all. So here we have Donald Trump making headlines this week. What a crazy first week, with executive order after executive order after executive order after, and people obviously who did not vote for Donald Trump are flipping out. They're really upset. So let me just say this. Let me tell you a couple things you got to know about an executive order, all right? Because people, I have people that I know personally. Someone got to me yesterday, a friend of mine, who works at a school with a lot of people who are immigrants, and they're terrified. Now, remember, the same thing happened the first couple weeks Donald Trump when he did the Muslim ban. It was a Muslim ban back then. Remember that? People getting stuck at airports. He wouldn't let people for weeks. ICE was out on a rampage. Same thing happened when in his first, but it was more towards Muslims. Now it's more towards Mexican immigrants, Latinos mostly, but immigrants, Mexico, that type of thing. So a lot of people are really worried about this. They're fearful. But you're seeing all these appellate court and judges blocking certain things that he can do. Let me explain to you what an executive order is and by default what it is not. All right? 4 things you should know about an executive order, because if you just hear, you're like, oh my gosh, listen to what he's doing. 4 things you should know about an executive order. Here's the first. An executive order is anything the president tells the people who work for him to do. All right? So an executive order is for all the people who work underneath the president. So federal government, all of that stuff. Any federal employee, an executive order is what the president is telling you have to do. All right? It's specifically for those who work directly for the president. It's important to note that it is not a law. It's not a law. Executive orders are not a law. Trump is not passing new laws. Only Congress can pass a law and then the president signs it. All right? Now, because the Republicans have the House and the Senate, then he might get these laws passed. But the reality is the president by himself can only do a few things without Congress approval. And one of them is go to war. So it's not a law. So when you hear these executive orders, these are not laws necessarily yet. They're what the president is telling the people who work for him, this is what you ought to implement now. And then Congress has to turn this into law and pass it. The president signs it, and then it becomes a law. Third thing you need to know is that an executive order doesn't usually have the force of law unless someone else has authorized the president to implement the law via executive order. So like the Supreme Court. Supreme Court can decide something that's law, and then the president has to he has to implement it. It's authorized because someone else. It's not just a law just because Donald Trump says, hey, you know what? I'm writing an executive order that ain't nobody eating Cinnamon Toast Crunch no more. I had a bowl of it this morning and I don't like it. Nobody's eating Cinnamon Toast Crunch again. That's not how it works. Can't do that, right? The other 4th thing you should know is that it doesn't usually force anyone in the private sector to do anything, right? The vast majority of America is not federal. It's private sector. That's what makes America what it is. And that's one of the big beefs between the left and the right. The left wants more big government. The right wants little government. They want private sector. They want people, companies to be able to set their own charter, set their own course and go for it. Where the left wants the government to regulate what people can and can't do. And so that's a big deal. So an executive order doesn't force the private sector to do anything. So Trump can say, the transgender law, the trans law, there's only two genders. Now, personally, I agree with that. I'm a guy made of male and female. I understand that there are psychological challenges that people have. I totally get that. But in terms of I agree with that, and I'll die agreeing with that. But in terms of it being a law everywhere, it's placebo. It's not real. It's not, because the private sector doesn't necessarily have to do what the executive orders say until they become laws passed down from Congress and so forth. And there are actually some people in Congress who do not agree with what he's doing. There's some people who don't bang with Trump because he's not a traditional politician. And by people, I mean the conservatives, Republicans. All right? So here's the thing. But here's the other thing you have to know. And this is separate from the four I just said. Trump's orders, to me, first of all, where the country is, and Trump's orders are a product of a biblical reality. This is what I feel like, in one sense, people call it judgment, but there's another way to process what's happening in a biblical way. And you have to think about, even if you see, normally when we think of America, we think 1609 to now. Some people say, no, 1776 until now, right? We're 250 years old, even though the colonies became, it wasn't like the people who were in the colonies in 1775 didn't become America in 1776. But I digress, right? That's not the scope of this particular video. But there's a biblical reality to what's happening in America. And I think I want to say what it is and explain why I'm saying it, and then give one or two more thoughts about how the things work. The first thought I have is this, and this is not new to you, but do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for whatever one sows, that he will also reap. For the one who sows to his own flesh, from the flesh will reap corruption. But the one who sows to the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. I'm going to leave this verse up because I want you to understand something here. I'm a person, I love America. I grew up here. I was born here. It's the only country I've known in terms of where I've lived. I can't realistically say I've been out of the country and I've enjoyed the things that I've seen. But I can't with a real conscience say I would rather live in this country. I'm not one of those people to be like, hey, I'm going back to Africa. Man, don't nobody in Africa know me. You know what I'm saying? And let's be clear, Africans saw Africans into slavery, so I don't even know what's going on, right? So I'm not one, I do love our country, but just like I love my family, I can critique my family and still love them. This idea that you cannot critique your family and like if you critique America, you don't love America is stupid. People have conflicts with their spouses and their children, and you love them. So I can't have problems with my country. So I think when you look at America, whether you want to start from 1609 to 1776, America on some level prides itself as a Christian nation. However, America has used the Bible to justify some of the most evil things that have been done to other human beings, right? America as a Christianity has decimated the second greatest commandment, which is love your neighbor as yourself, right? Did this for hundreds of years, decades, laws passed, all of it, right? You know, people always say, back when all the stuff was going on about are you woke or you're not, people would be like, particularly white people, conservatives, would be like, yeah, but we had an American Revolution and we went to war to end slavery, so what about that? Like, why doesn't that matter? I was like, okay, cool. That, you know, you don't get a pat on the back for something you should have never done on one level. But to your point, let's do that. But then you have almost 100 years of basically what they call Jim Crow laws, which are basically economic sanctions against people because they were freed, right? So it's not, if the war was supposed to represent like people's, then where were the economic sanctions coming from? And we know that was in the South, but the North left the South so that Rutherford B. Hayes could become president. And that was the change off. You let him be president. This is the 1870s. Let him be president. And then the North will pull out of the South. And once the North left the South, then you had Plessy versus Ferguson, which became Jim Crow, which became economic sanctions against people just because they were black and against women and things like that, right? So what you have is a country that has largely built itself on mammon, money over the Messiah. It didn't build itself on the character of God. It built itself on particular interpretations of the theology of God. Manifest destiny. America's the new Israel, and God is moving us forward. And no matter who we clobber along the way, that's what's happened. And so what we've turned into is a country that is reaping what it's sown. This is why I hate the blame shifting on, oh, that's just leftist policies, or that's just right-wing extremism. No, America right now this verse is clear. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. You cannot say you're doing things in the year of our Lord, 18, whatever. You can't do things that contradict what the Bible says, right? You can't do that and then change some laws, pass a few laws, and then tell people to get over whatever it was that you had grievances with. We've changed the laws. America is the one country that says, hey, we didn't do anything wrong. It was for the good. Hey, the Civil War was about states' rights. It wasn't about maintaining slavery. All these things, right? But you have all these other countries that had nothing to do with that, like European countries, they understood their role in the Holocaust. It is a federal crime to brandish a swastika in any of 34 countries in Europe. You will get a mandatory 5 years now, maybe 3, but I think it's 5 years just for even celebrating that. They take children to basically Holocaust museums so that they can see their history. But in America, we put everything under free speech. So you got high schools and cities and stuff named after people who were essentially traitors to America, who wanted to see slaves maintained, right? You cannot do that in a country where you're promoting Christ. You cannot have pictures of people coming out of church with people hanging from trees in the photo. You cannot do that, pass a few laws, and think that God is good. He doesn't care. That's just not how it works. For the one who sows to his own flesh will from the flesh reap corruption. America, whether it's a free nation or not, if it's better than other nations, I'm not arguing that, but America has been a corrupt nation in terms of what God says. Maybe not in comparison to China, maybe not in comparison to Russia, but in comparison to what it said it believed the Bible, it's a corrupt nation, and we're reaping that corruption. So no wonder the country is still the way it is. Think about this for a second. And I've said this before, but think about this. This is the freest America's ever been, right? They say that, hey, meritocracy. They said that black people are playing. There's women can run companies. Women are killing it right now. There's no laws that are impeding anyone from making it in America. Systemic racism is gone. Systemic oppression of women is gone. All these things are gone. Let's just say that's demonstrably true. Let's say that's true. That means this is the freest America's ever been. Whether it's from 1609 or 1776, today is the freest America's ever been. We've made it. We've accomplished what the Constitution set out to do, right? The Declaration of Independence set out to do. And look how crazy our country is right now. Look how crazy things are right now, right? We're reaping what we've sown. You cannot put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound and expect there to be no infection, no bacteria, right? This is what people don't want to say. They get mad at you. They unfollow you, and that's fine. But this is just the reality. And it's just my reality. You could disagree, but this is the reality. 1 Peter 1:18, knowing that this is Peter talking to the Jews about the difference between what they've inherited and he says this, knowing that you were ransomed from the feudal ways, inherited from your forefathers, not with perishable things such as silver and gold. He's saying you were ransomed from the feudal ways inherited from your forefathers. Here's the reality, whether you like it or not. America right now is a collection of things that we've inherited from the people who were before us. It happens all the time. I'm a pastor. I'm a Christian. I'm a pastor. Their pastors have done such a terrible job in their character that if I tell people I'm a pastor, they're immediately suspicious of me. So I don't usually tell people I'm a pastor unless you directly ask me, or if we're hanging out and then it'll come up. They're immediately suspicious because of not what I've done, but what other pastors have done. We inherit it. So whether you were a white person that owned slaves, it doesn't matter. You've inherited a feudal ways that people in the past that look like you did. Same with the black community. Every time somebody black does something wild, it's like, look at what black people do. No, black people don't do all that. They did that person, right? you inherit the feudal ways from other people. This is what happens. So America is both a product of we've reaped what we're sowing, and we've inherited feudal ways from our forefathers. I love that that's forefathers is the word, because that's kind of what the Constitution represents, our forefathers, right? So now, with that being said, we have to understand this point too. We have to talk about the reality of the Constitution. And let me tell you why I'm bringing this up. Because one of Trump's executive orders, the one that's probably making the most noise right now, the most noise of Trump's executive orders is birthright citizenship. All right? Birthright citizenship is essentially a 14th Amendment law that was passed, and I think 1857, I think. And essentially it was in context, it was written so that black people who were slaves, who had children that were born, those children became American citizens, right? They weren't, even if you came from Africa, right? If you came from Africa, but you got married or whatever, and you had children, those children were American citizens. It was a way to sort of protect black people. Well, Trump is trying to overturn it, because what that's become is essentially what's called birthright citizenship, which means even if you're an immigrant, and you happen to be in America visiting a relative, right? And you're pregnant, and then you have your baby while you're here, that baby's an American citizen no matter what. Like, just the fact that the baby was born here, that baby's an American citizen. That's how we've operated for a while. What Trump is doing is saying, we're going to overturn that. We're not going to just let you be born, because, and here's the phrase that both sides who are against what Trump's doing and who are for it are using. Here's what it boils down to, this phrase. You have to be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. So on the side who oppose Trump, they say, listen, if you come here and you're visiting America and you commit a crime, you're going to prison in America. You are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. That's a very reductionistic sort of explanation. The side who are for Trump that say, yeah, get rid of it, they're saying, listen, if you're not a legal citizen, you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. So if someone is traveling from one country to the next, they come to America, maybe they come to visit, you're just coming to visit, you got a temporary visa, you're coming to visit for a few days, a relative, you're pregnant, your water breaks, you end up having a baby here. Trump and them are saying, you're not a legal citizen of America. You're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, right? You're not subject. You're an illegal immigrant. I mean, you're just visiting, or you're illegal, and your child is not going to be an American citizen based on that. Because when the child is an American citizen, that child is given a degree of rights that those parents can claim. And a lot of people are saying, hey, this is terrible. We can't do this. We cannot do this. So this is the fight. This is the battle. So this phrase is the battle. Subject to the jurisdiction of the United States is the phrase. What does that mean? Here's the problem, though. Here's the problem. People will say, the right is saying, hey, that was for Black America. That was for slaves. The context of that is not what the forefathers intended, right? And the other side will say, no, that is not just for that context. You got to look at it through the lens of America. And here's the problem. Both sides are right on one level. But here's the reality. You can look this up. But both sides have agreed for years. I've heard this for decades. The Constitution is a living document. And let me put it in so you can understand what that statement means. Let me compare it to, as a Christian, how we view the Bible. All right? The Constitution is America's Bible. It has America's morality in the Bible. It has what people are supposed to do and how they're supposed to live, in the same way the Bible has our morality and how we're supposed to live. It's the secular Bible to people who are, they believe that the Constitution is the governing document that tells us how to run the country. It is a living document in the same way the Bible is living to us, right? The Word of God is active, like a double-edged sword. This is Hebrews 4. They would see this, they wouldn't use that verb, but they would have the same perspective, is that the Constitution is a living document. Even though it was written in 1776, it's a living document. We have to apply it to the culture today. Just like as a pastor, I try to understand the Bible is written contextually. There are very few passages in the Bible that were written for all time. I mean, sure, you got Proverbs, but all of these things have a context. You know, every letter was written to a person or a group of people for what they were going through. And so my job is I recognize the word of God is living and active. How do I take what I just read here, explain it to my church, and then show how it applies to us today, thousands of years after this actual passage of scripture was written? That's exactly how they view the Constitution. It's a living document. So you can't just say, no, that's not what they intended. In the same way, I can say, well, that's what Paul intended, but that's not the culture we live in, so that doesn't apply to America today. I have to look at it differently. It's a living document. Everyone says this. So this idea of subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, just like a preacher would, it's up for interpretation. How do you interpret these words? This is why you can go to a church, hear the same message taught from 10 different pastors, and the application will be 10 different ways. Why? Because they're applying it, they're taking that and applying it to their cultural context. They're applying it to the pastor should know where his church is, what they believe. It's the same thing with the Constitution. So the subject to jurisdiction of the United States for the birthright citizenship is the key. And that's going to be everything. Everything that if you're not a Christian, everything is about the Constitution. And that's what the Supreme Court does. They take cases to them, and they look at them and they interpret them, and they have the highest opinion in the land. They are the apostles of American society, and they have the highest opinion of the land, and whatever they say is their interpretation of the Constitution. This is why all of this stuff is just crazy. All of it's crazy. The end of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Cool. End it. But for real, that's just another thing. That's a product of you reap what you sow. I'm sorry, this may sound woke to some of you, but for much of American history, it was WEI, white equity and inclusion. No one else, white male equity, no one else was involved. No one else was allowed to be, you couldn't vote, you couldn't even have a bank. Women couldn't have a bank account until like the 70s. Susan B. Anthony was pleading her case in the 1920s, man. How long have women been in the country? Since 1609 or since 1776? However you want to describe it. And women couldn't even have bank accounts until the 1970s, man. So again, there's been a lot of that. And so you're reaping what you've sown. No one cares that you passed these laws 60 years ago. They're saying you had a couple hundred years of a head start. So that's where all this stuff is coming from. I don't agree with all of it. I don't necessarily agree with all the reparations talking about stuff was going on, but I understand where it's coming from. It's not like we were a neutral country. It's not like America was a neutral country and black people said, hey, we'll take this lifestyle and we'll go over here. White people said, hey, we'll take this and go over here. And the Asians said, we'll do. That's not how it was. It was a particular people group that decided for all people groups what they can have and what they couldn't have. And now people are saying, hey, you promised a vision of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I want my happiness. And you got your happiness. You own everything. I don't. That's a lot of this is that. Whether it's right or wrong is not the point of this. It's just real. This is what I'm trying to say. This is why I've been able to. So the end of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's fine. End it. I mean, do it, whatever. But that's not the point. Is the reason why diversity, equity, and inclusion even happened is not because of the left. Yeah, maybe it's because we're reaping corruption. America, it's a corrupt nation. We're a corrupt nation in the eyes of God. From what the Bible says, how you're supposed to love your neighbor as yourself. What does slavery or hatred or denying women? What does all that have to do with loving your neighbor as yourself? Right. Well, what about other countries? The Bible doesn't say compare yourself to other countries. It says compare yourself to Jesus. Compare yourself to the Word. I'm not comparing myself to other people. I don't get conviction because I'll always find something I'm better at than other people. But when I compare myself to the Word of Jesus, it's like, woo. And this is what happens. You have these conversations. People are like, yeah, but what about China? What about Africa? They said none of those countries ever said that they're establishing themselves based on religious freedom. None of those countries said that they believe in Jesus and are establishing a nation based on faith in Jesus Christ. So save that. Just like when people start talking about, well, how can you prove God exists? And you get into all these arguments. And it's like, fam, listen, the foundation of my faith is not whether or not this Bible passage and this Bible passage do not contradict each other. A lot of Christians fall victim to this. The foundation of my faith is that Jesus rose from the dead. So you can tell me, well, look, the Bible's, it could contradicts itself. Does the resurrection? Because the Bible, listen, the resurrection is why I'm a believer. If you can prove to me that they found Jesus' bones and they had holes in there and they were really his bones, we have a problem. We have a real, Houston, we have a problem. The whole nation becomes Houston. We have a problem. But if you're just saying, well, I don't agree because how can you prove that you're, I don't care. I'm not even arguing with you about that. I don't even care about that. My faith is built on the fact that the resurrection of Jesus Christ is real. Because if he didn't rise from the dead, then he was a good dude at best. He was a Jewish Gandhi. I ain't putting my hope in Gandhi because Gandhi ain't come back. Gandhi ain't say nothing to nobody. Gandhi wasn't seen by hundreds of people after that. The sky didn't go dark when Gandhi, and the earthquake didn't shut, and people who were dead came back from the, no. I believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So all that talk about, well, what about this passage, and what about this, and we don't really know who wrote the Pentateuch, and we don't really know who wrote. Talk to me about the resurrection first, fam. That's what my faith is in. So all this stuff is just like, all these talking points, they don't mean anything. Diversity and inclusion, and even trans rights. Trans rights. All this stuff is America's reaping what it's sown. America promised, listen, if we all went to a restaurant, right? If we went to a restaurant and the restaurant made a name for itself by saying this: if you come to our restaurant, you will get your food in 11 minutes or less, or it's a free meal, right? And it's good food. You will get your food in 11 minutes or less, or it's a free meal. We go to the restaurant. Say you and I go to the restaurant. We order. It's pretty packed. And we're like, man, it might be, I don't know if we're going to get our meal in 11 minutes. It's kind of packed, right? So we're waiting. And we got our timers on. From the time, we're even telling the waiter, all right, we're going to start our clocks now. He's like, all right, go ahead. Boom, we start our clocks. Boom, 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 boom. And we're waiting. And now it's 5 minutes in. We ain't seeing nothing. We ain't even got our drinks yet. Oh, man, we might get a free meal today, baby. And all of a sudden, 7 minutes, they bring the drinks. And it's like, oh, man. We really went there to get a free meal. And now we're at like 10 minutes and we don't see nothing. We don't even see our waiter. Then one of us says, hey, the waiter's over there. And it's like, how much more? He got 35 seconds left. Woo, 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 woo. And then all of a sudden, the waiter finally shows up at 11 minutes and 42 seconds with our first appetizers. And we're like, hey, bro, hey, listen, man, our meal is free. And he's like, no. I brought it here. He's like, no, look. We told you we're starting the clock. We can't change the clock. Look, 11 minutes, 42 seconds. Our food is free. And he's like, no, you gotta understand, man. No, it's busy here. Look at this, it's packed. It's like, listen, we understand that. We get it, but we didn't come up with the slogan. Your company did. So, I'm gonna go get the manager. Go get the manager. We'll talk to the manager. Hey, what's the problem? Our meal should be free, bro. Our appetizers came out 11 minutes 40. Yeah, but it's pretty busy. It's a Friday night. Bro, that's not, you don't have a disclaimer. You said 11 minutes of free, and it's like, all right, fine. And they're upset, right? Because they wanted us to budge. They promoted a mantra, and now they have to live up to it. That is exactly what America's done. You can't call this country the land of opportunity, the home of the free, the land of the brave, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and then not expect people to want to come here, not expect people to fight tooth and nail to get here. What do you expect? And then you don't give people the thing you promised, and then people get pissed off. And so now they want rights. They want their money back. They want all these things. It's not because just the left. It's because we promoted a particular way of life and then denied people from having it. And now that was corruption. And so now we're reaping it. So Donald Trump, to me, this is going to be a crazy 4 years. But at this point, it's going to be it's because we're reaping what we've sown. Now, don't get me wrong. And by saying this, I'm not saying that everything he does is wrong. This stuff I agree with. I think there's this, the country's gone crazy. But my goal isn't I agree with one side or the other. My goal is I understand why people feel the way they feel. Or I'm trying to understand. Because it's been crazy. You can't, listen, I'm going to end with this. Say you're counseling a couple, right? You're talking to your marriage counselor. And the husband has been verbally, but more importantly, physically abusive. Say that, right? Physically. His wife has gone to the hospital a couple of occasions. He's violated her, right? You're talking with them. And he says to you, listen, I was wrong in those things, but I said I'm sorry. She needs to get over it and forgive me. It would be of the utmost insincere counsel if you said, you know, he's right. He has apologized for these things. There's no way you would say that. You would, if you were a smart counselor, if you're an idiot, you would be like, yeah, he's right. If you were smart, you would tell that guy, listen, bro, the fact that she's still with you is a miracle. You have done so much damage to her psychologically, physically, that you're not in any position to say, hey, I said I was sorry. I've changed. I haven't done that in months. True, but the impact on her, she still is afraid. She still doesn't trust you. Don't think for a moment that because she's here and hasn't left, that she's somehow okay with the past and nothing bothers her. No, when you walk into a room, she tenses up. You can't get mad at her for that, right? That's how we would think, and that would be wisdom. But in American society, we act like that shouldn't matter. You beaten, battered, violated people for hundreds of years and expect them to just get over it because you stopped doing it in the way you used to. And it doesn't work that way. And I'm not saying everyone's experienced that, but there's a psychological reality that our country is plagued with. And sometimes some people are going to struggle with that more than others. We reap what we sown. And so all of this stuff that I'm saying and seeing, I get it. I'm glad my trust is in Jesus Christ. Honestly, because no matter what, this is why I was meditating on this morning. On Isaiah 66:1, I was just sitting there like, man, Lord, this is crazy. It says, heaven is my throne and the earth is my footstool. For who would build a house for me, right? And I was thinking I was just like, the earth is your footstool. And I was just thinking like, man, Lord, there are people fighting and living and dying because they love your footstool. Like, I don't want to fight over your footstool. I want to see your face. I want to see your presence. This is your footstool. This is beneath you. Like, you got people who are claiming they're Christians and think they got to take back their country for Jesus. This is his footstool. And then I thought, wait a minute. Satan is God of your footstool, Lord. He's God of your footstool. I mean, the visual reality is God is sitting on a throne and his left leg is up and the earth is underneath it, holding it up. You gotta be kidding me. Like this, the earth, I mean, the Lord is so magnificent. He's so majestic and transcendent that the earth it matters to him, but not like we act like it does. The Lord isn't tripping. This is why when like pastors fall, like, oh my gosh, they broke. Man, the Lord's reputation isn't tripping. When he comes back, and nobody's going to be like, but what about that pastor? Man, nobody cares about that, right? The reality is like, we want to see the Lord. I don't want to fight over his footstool. I want to see him. And so I just think, listen, these next 4 years, some of you, you're going to like stuff, you're not going to like it. Same last 4 years. There was stuff we survived, right? Yeah, it was crazy 4 years. My gosh, eggs are like $8. $8. I'm about to get it. I'm going to rent some chickens, some roosters or something. Like eggs, it's just crazy. We get all of that, right? But we're still here. Still here. So yeah, I think it's a crazy time. There have been crazier and maybe crazier times to come. But if you have faith, like, be confident that when things are over our heads, they're under his feet, right? I'm getting out of here. It's Friday night, man. I got to shoot a wedding tomorrow. I got to get all my stuff together. Grace and peace, y'all. Like and subscribe to the channel. Share this if you agree, disagree. I get it. It's politics. Everyone has a perspective. This is mine. I'm not changing my perspective. So if you come in the comment section and you critique me and want me to change my perspective, I'm not. Make your own video, tag me, and I'll watch it. All right? Grace and peace, y'all. See you.